Good morning and welcome to Community Roundtable, a free public service brought to you on AM 1590 KDJS. If you're a member of a nonprofit organization and would like to be featured on the program, call the KDJS Newsline at 320-235-2900. That's 320-235-2900.
This is our Community Roundtable. Al Sheldon here, 1590 KDJS Wilmer. Sheriff Dan Hartog and also Rick Loge in the studio with us today. Going to talk about something that really hits home during summertime, and that would be motorcycle safety. And man, what a huge, wide open topic. Let's start with Sheriff Hartog. Dan, motorcycle safety, you've been sheriff for a little while. You've seen a lot of things when it comes to that, huh?
Yeah, it's I've been in law enforcement nearly 38 years, and there's been a lot of been to motorcycle crashes, some involving fatalities, and we just like to get the word out, and the biggest part of it, is education, getting people trained properly and knowing the rules of the road when it comes to riding the motorcycles.
Yeah, and there are some simple things, but so many people forget, especially when you get into springtime, and then it's like, oh, it's 62 degrees, I've got to get the bike out, and you kind of lose your common sense, right?
Yeah, exactly. And just take the time to become reacquainted with the motorcycle. And we've seen over the years, too, motorcycles. Rick and I were just talking a little bit and how the motorcycles have changed over the years. If you haven't ridden for a while and you're used to riding a bike that was maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, and now you get on a new one, there's a big difference between the bikes. And obviously now they have a little more power and capability that way. So just become acquainted with the bike and understand what the bike can do and your abilities in riding a bike.
I have looked at some newer bikes recently. Friends have them, and yeah, they're different. I was telling you before we went on the air about what I drive occasionally, which is a 79 Kawasaki, as we called it, a road bike. 4 cylinders, 5 speeds, weighs quite a bit, maybe more than the new ones. And the new bikes are so different. If you're a rider from 30 years ago and you're to get on a new bike, I'd want to get retrained, I think. There are classes for kind of refreshing your memory, aren't there? Get on these new bikes, Rick?
We have quite a few different classes. We have the BRC, which is the basic rider course, which is $180. It's 14 hours. We provide the motorcycles. And just getting used to getting back on the bikes. Even though we've had students that have been in class that have years of riding experience, they walk out of all of our classes learning something. Even if they pass or fail, it's a great class to take.
And 14 hours is not a great commitment, I don't think.
It's not. It's usually like in Wilmer and Hutchinson here, we go Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And Friday night's the classroom, 5 hours in the classroom, and then Saturday, Sunday on the range.
Is this a once-a-year thing, this class, or is it just periodically when you have enough students? How's that work?
We go in between. We have 29 sites in the state of Minnesota that we teach at. And in Wilmer, Hutch, it's usually 2 weeks at each spot. So we'll take the trailer to Hutch for 2 weeks, and then it comes back to Wilmer. So it goes from April to September every year.
So when you're training people, what kind of bikes do you use? You bring the bikes?
We supply the bikes. We have Enduros, we have Droms, anything from 175s up to 250s is what we have.
It takes me back to when I first got my license, the ripe old age of 16. And on our farm, I had already been riding a single-cylinder Honda 50. And I knew the ins and outs of the bike. And then I graduated to a 350 Honda. That was the big bike back then, a twin-cylinder CB, The funny thing about going to get my license was going through the cones and the maneuverability. And although I could do that almost blindfolded on our farm, when you're in front of an instructor and other people taking the class,
right,
it's a little different situation,
Yeah, it's you put the pressure on, yourself. Dan and I were talking about, like Dan mentioned, we were talking about bikes and that too. And I was telling him when I went to get my motorcycle endorsement, I'm really dating myself now, I showed up at the courthouse. And all I had to do was make it around the block. And then if you made it back safe, you're safe to ride out on the road.
We did go around the block, and we also had cones in the parking lot. Like I say, I was 1973 on mine. And the funny thing was, there was a fellow there. We were a bunch of teenagers, maybe up to 20 years old, and there was one fellow there who we thought was old. He was probably in his 40s. and he had a big Harley. And he put that in low gear and just perfectly through the cones at a slow pace, And then I come to learn later in life that those big bikes, the center of gravity is so good.
It is, but he probably had a lot more experience than what you did, and that's what our classes are about. Is we want to get people out there to get experience on the bikes on the range, to learn how to handle their bikes, like you're talking about the cones and everything. Our classes go from the BRC. We have the intermediate where you bring your own bike in. That's a 5-hour class, and then from there you can go up to the advanced class. Again, your own bike. And then if you really want to challenge yourself, we recommend about a year of solo riding experience under your belt. Then you take the expert class. That's an 8-hour class, and it's only offered in Wilmer, White Bear Lake, and Elk River. So we have it right here in Wilmer.
What does that involve, an expert class?
The expert class, if you're familiar with like the police motorcycle class that they have, how they basically throw their bikes around and handle the bikes low speeds, that's what this class does. And you'll be on your own bike doing that. We don't supply the bikes for that one.
Just in case you decide to go a little too far one way.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Oh, gosh. Do you ever have people tell you, either Dan or Rick answer this, or both of you, people tell you what it's like out on the highway and what maybe scared them or what they learned coming back from riding for a year or two? There are some situations you get into on the highway that are not in your control as a motorcyclist.
Well, as a motorcyclist, we're vulnerable because cars aren't looking for us, basically. So it's our responsibility to make ourselves as visible as possible. We can't rely on the motors to, think that they're going to see us.
Couple of things I think about. You guys have probably heard this too. Springtime especially. Cornering and the film of dust, the gravel that'll cut you loose and you can't keep it upright,
That's right. Dan and I were talking. Dan informed me that the latest information I had was in the state of Minnesota, 11 people have been killed this summer.
Already.
But Dan said last weekend someone in Meeker County was killed.
Yep.
So the numbers are off a little bit, but the numbers I had was 11. 10 of them were not wearing helmets that were killed. So the helmet is probably your most important piece of protective gear that you could invest in.
And that's still a personal choice in Minnesota, right?
That's a personal choice, yep.
I'm a helmet guy, so I have been since I was a kid, jumping ditches with a small bike,
Right. And Al, you talk about different things that happen to you out on the road. Riding bike, I ride bike. Rick rides bike, and I know some other people that do. And I just drove out to Milwaukee a few weeks ago, and I had a vehicle pass me on the right on the shoulder. It went around me, and we've had. And one of the things you really have to watch for on a bike is making sure that when you're out there riding, other people see you, and you pay attention. Just for instance, on that ride too, going down it was a 4-lane and a vehicle passing, and I looked over, and we're doing the speed limit 70 miles an hour, and there's a gal that's passing me, and while she's passing me, she's texting. So I mean, you just have to really pay attention to what other people are doing and be very defensive in your driving. And we see times, a lot of times where people maybe they're misjudging your speed and they'll make a left-hand turn in front of you. We see that quite often in motorcycle crashes. So it's just a matter of really paying attention to what's going on around you and making sure, like Rick said, you're seen. People know you're there.
There's so many things that come to mind now. Gosh, I remember going down First Street here in Wilbur a couple of years ago, and I'm in the left lane, and I'm beside a guy who's in the right lane, and I got a car in front of me, and the guy on my right just starts coming over. I looked up. He finally looked down, and I'm like, hello.
Exactly.
I was getting over, gosh. Here's one for you. I don't know what this is called. Freeze up, maybe, as a motorcycle rider. When I was young, our little hometown, there was one road we had a slight curve, a dog leg to the left. And I'm on that curve and getting ready for the curve, and all of a sudden I can't turn. I can't turn, and I'm almost to the ditch. Finally, I turned it over. I was just stiff as a mannequin, you know?
I have a question for you. Where were you looking?
I thought I was looking straight ahead. But
right
I was
off
just,
the corner.
I couldn't turn. I couldn't.
It's called target
I couldn't
fixation.
take the dog leg.
Yep, it's called target fixation. Where
Okay.
you look is where you're going to go. It doesn't matter if a car pulls out in front of you and you look at that car. You can try to do any maneuver you want, but you're going to go right where you're looking.
Target fixation.
Yep.
Okay. I'm guessing I'm not the only one that's happened to. I was young. I was 17, maybe a senior in high school,
Yep.
and I'll never ever forget not being able to turn on that gosh darn curve. You know, dumbest thing, but never happened again. I learned, man. Whatever happened, a good lesson without having to be on my side.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about helmets. I see a lot of people that wear some clothing that'll be better for you. I see some people in swimsuits. And my wife, who having been on the ambulance crew into London for a while a few years ago, has seen what she calls a little road rash.
Yep.
You know?
Exactly.
Man, that's
wear the proper equipment, the boots, that type of thing, because there's you have some pretty good sized bugs coming at you. I mean, wear the proper eye protection. Make sure you're wearing that. And I mean, if you get hit in the eye with something, a rock maybe that flies up off of somebody's tire that's coming at you or passes you, just have that protection on. So because you don't have time to react to it while you're going down the road 55, 60 miles an hour or faster. And you don't have time to react to that if you don't have that equipment on already. So,
is there a more common accident that happens, or is it just all over the board? I mean, I feel like I can stop pretty quick on my bike. Trouble is, who's behind me? What are they going to do? Do you see bikes getting rear-ended, bikes rear-ending somebody? Is there anything that's more prevalent than another? Or?
Well, the most causes of accidents, number 1 and 2 cause are intersections is a high-risk area, and the other thing is just like you talked about, curves, people going wide on curves.
Out of control.
Out of control. They just don't know how to corner correctly. And that's every single thing in our classes. Every single class involves braking, turning, that type of stuff that you may or you will encounter on the road. Another thing you can do to make yourself more visible on the road is you can add a modulator to your headlight. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a modulator.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it caught your attention as
that's when they flash at you.
That's
right?
when it's flashing
Okay,
at you.
Gotcha.
They're legal in the state of Minnesota. They just have to be shut off at night because they become a strobe light. But they caught your attention. That's the main thing. We're trying to get motorcyclists to get the motorists' attention one way or another, either brake clothing, modulators. A lot of the things when I ride, I'm always playing the what if game. What if Dan's in front of me? What if Dan hits his brake? Then you have an escape path.
360.
So you know if all of a sudden Dan's carrying log, split wood or something, and a piece comes off, I know what I'm going to do ahead of time instead of when it comes off. Then all of a sudden you're stuck, not knowing what to do. I don't know if you remember, like 3 years ago on TV, it showed a guy on the interstate, and he had one of those floating rafts on the back of a big boat, and it came off. Well, the guy on the motorcycle, the kid, had plenty of room to react. He did the target fixation. He just picked that bike up that day. He just bought the most important thing of his life was the helmet, and that saved him.
Wow. Yeah, in a situation like that, what's better to do? Let's say we're not on target fixation, but you've got something in front of you. All of a sudden, it's on the road. Do you slam on the brakes? Do you try to swerve? What's the best situation?
Well, see, that's what I was just talking about. Is you play the what if game. If it happens, you already have an escape path. That's either going to the right of the vehicle or whatever's coming out, to the left, or stopping if possible. If there's traffic behind you, a motorcycle will stop much faster than anything else out there. So if you do stop on a motorcycle, you always want to end up in first gear. And if you come to a dead stop, keep checking your rear view mirrors to see if the people coming up behind you see you. If not, leave yourself an escape path so you can get out of the way and let them rear end the car in front of you or whatever the traffic's in front of you instead of you being in the middle of it.
We were talking about this before going on the air also. Me and my old motorcycle going to work when it's dark out and it's early and there are deers. There are raccoons. I saw a raccoon this morning. I swerved to miss him just by a foot or two with the car. But on a motorcycle, a deer pops up. Well, what next,
It's
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything else, just being prepared, and like Rick said, actually thinking about that as you're driving. Okay, if a deer pops up here, what am I going to do? But just paying attention to what's going around. I mean, we had a crash years ago where the deer actually came out of the ditch and knocked the motorcyclist off the motorcycle. The motorcyclist didn't hit it. The deer came out of the ditch and just knocked him off.
Hit the bike, yeah.
Hit the bike, and that was just a really unfortunate crash. But you have to be careful. I mean, pheasants flying out of the ditch, you know how they can pop up. And, again, having that protective clothing on and helmet, that's a biggie, too.
Don't call me old, but I think my biggest protectant when I go to work and it's dark out is I go slow. I don't crank it up too much, you know.
Well, the other thing you can do is lane position. So if it's dark out and there's no other road users, you can ride right by the yellow line. That gives you, as the motorcyclist, you have 3 lanes within a lane. So if you move over to the left third of your lane, the very left third, that gives you a lot of cushion out there. If a deer or something pops out, it gives you more time to react versus riding in the right third of the lane and they pop out and it's right on you.
Leads me to another thought, talking about the left lane, the right lane on a 2-lane road. When you're riding with a group of motorcyclists, what's a better way to do it? Single file?
What we recommend from MSF is that you always ride staggered formation. You have a 2-second following distance. When you come into corners, you go into single file, and then you take the corners the way you need to. And the only time they really recommend that you go side by side is when you come to a stop sign. Then both motorcycles, they stop and they can take off at the same time. And that way the group gets shorter, if it's 50 bikes, then there's only 25 group.
Yeah. I've never done the group riding thing. I had no idea. So, yeah, very interesting to find out about. Another part of the topic here is there are times when bikers don't give us a good name as motorcyclists. They do something that they shouldn't be doing. Dan, you mentioned passing on the right. Mm-hmm. I've been passed on the right by a motorcycle when there's not a passing lane. Mm-hmm. Or a turn lane, I should say.
Oh, sure.
It makes it hard,
Right. And it's like driving anything else. I mean, obey the rules of the road when it comes to riding a motorcycle, know what they are. And I know in some states, I think California, you can drive, you can split the lanes, go in between the vehicles that are jammed up in a traffic jam and ride between the cars. You can't do that in Minnesota. But yeah. But I don't know if I'd want to do it anyway. I mean, to me, it looks dangerous. But it's just obeying the rules out there and paying attention to what you're doing. So.
Yeah. What if somebody in that lane were to, for some reason, open a car door?
Exactly.
And I think back to just a couple of years ago down in Miami, and we're on our way further south from there. But we had plenty of time. We drove through the middle of Miami and down the Atlantic Ocean Boulevard. And some of the things I saw made me feel proud to be a Minnesotan because of the way they were driving, man. Mm-hmm. I saw bikers go in and out of the lanes of traffic between cars just to get up to the stoplight ahead of everybody. And then it was car, motorcycle, car. Mm-hmm. 2 lanes plus your right turn, your left turn. And crazy.
Yeah,
I can't believe they would do that. But,
yeah, and I have my personal stories. What I've seen in South Dakota last year. I mean, there were passing and no passing zones, trying to get around vehicles quick on a real curvy road and that type of thing. And I actually thought I was going to see one guy die right there. But yeah, it's just taking chances like that, and they're putting everybody else at risk when they're doing that. And so it's just obey the rules of the road, and for the most part. We have a lot of really good riders out there.
Yeah.
And that take the sport serious and pay attention to what's going on.
That's an economical way to get around,
yeah,
too.
It is, and it is very relaxing, too. It's a good way to get out and meet other people that are doing it.
Unless you get a June bug to the forehead.
You still have that mark there.
Thank goodness I had the helmet on. This is when I lived down in central Iowa, and I was coming back from Des Moines to the town I lived in 45 minutes away. And right in the helmet, if I hadn't had the helmet on, the bug hit me, and I'm like, my head goes back. I'm like, okay, whiplash? What do we have going on here? They get pretty big.
One other thing I'd like to comment on, the number one cause of death to motorcyclists is drinking and riding for fatality. So If the motorcyclists are going to drink, separate the drinking from riding.
Some
Either-
people can't walk when they drink. How can they ride?
In the state of Minnesota, the Bait organization has a number you can call. It's 1-888-DIAL-RIDE. The E isn't used. It's just a good way to remember it. And they will come and pick you and your bike up, no questions asked, and deliver you home. And that's on from Friday midnight until Sunday at 2 a.m.
Wow, can't argue with that.
No, that's
Hey,
a
your
great
kids and
service.
grandkids would love to see you again.
That's right.
Man. Are numbers going down when it comes to accidents and deaths, or how are we doing over the years?
Well, in 1980, there was 121 motorcyclists that were killed in 122 crashes. So if you look at 1980 as maybe being the benchmark as far as getting fatalities down, they have gone down from there. But last year in 2017, there was 52. So that's still a high number when you take in consideration, you're out there only for 4 months or so, and you have that many fatalities. So that's pretty high when you look at the percentage.
Percentages, yeah.
And but over the years, we've been in that 50 some mark as far as people being killed. And again, part of it is alcohol related, and the other part is just maybe being inexperienced and not wearing a helmet.
Yeah, man, I'm just flashing back to 3 or 4 years ago in Marshall, and you mentioned a car driver texting. I saw a motorcyclist texting in the middle of downtown Marshall, going very slow, turning a corner, but didn't stop, turning on a red light and playing with the phone, And I don't know about you, but I have a hard time texting when I'm standing here.
No way.
I'm a one-fingered Louie here.
No way. Well, I just like to put in, Al, if I could put a plug in for our traffic enforcement safety team test. And Steph Felt, who's our coordinator for that, puts this together and helps us out with the education part of it and help get the message out there. And we've been doing this since 2006, and motorcycle safety is one of the things that we really like to get out there, the education piece during the summer months, and just make people aware. And we appreciate you doing this, and hopefully some of the listeners will listen to it and take Rick up on some of the safety training that Minnesota puts in place. So
this is a topic that'll be on our website. Everything we have here on 1590 will also be at k-musicradio.com for people that are hooked on the internet and like to look around there and check our website out and can click and listen, and maybe we'll touch home a little bit with a relatable story that we've had. So Dan, you're going to be doing a lot of riding now coming up after you hang up the shingle, hang up the badge, whatever you're hanging up,
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. January, will be my January 8th is when the new sheriff is sworn in. But I'm looking forward to it. I've enjoyed this career. Like I said, it's been nearly 38 years, and it'll be 16 years as sheriff, and it's been great working with people throughout the community, and look forward to it. And I'm plan on hanging around here and probably get involved in some other stuff too. So
a lot of things to do, of course. So a lot of events in our great area, whether you're ice fishing or fishing out of the boat or going to Robbins Island for one of the concerts. Speaking of which, our highway out front here will be a little busy at least four weeknights this summer, won't it?
Rockin' Robbins, yep.
Who puts everything together on Highway 71, if I can ask? What a huge job to control that traffic.
Oh, that's the Wilmer Police Department. They put together the traffic control. I know they have some explorers, a group of explorers that they work with, and they put that all together, and it works out great. They can get cars in and out of there very quickly. So, and no fender benders that I've heard of. So.
None that I've seen, and we've been to quite a few of the events, and we've got a bird's eye view right here out the windows, So
you do.
All right, here's a loaded question, and I've done this on the air on our three radio stations at one point in time. How long have you been riding a motorcycle?
Oh boy, since I was probably 14.
14, and you were licensed at 16, I'm guessing, right?
Correct, yep.
Okay. So as a young kid who had no fear, what's the fastest you've ever gone? Can you fess up?
Fastest I've ever gone?
Yeah.
Well, it's on the interstate out in Utah. the speed limit's 85 miles an hour out there. And I mean, I'm not the type that wants to get up to 150 or anything like that. So it was between 85 and 90 miles an hour, and I thought that was clicking right along in the middle of all that traffic. We got semis and everything else bouncing around you, so it gets a little interesting.
Or some four-legged furry thing jumping out. Yeah, that's always the scary part.
Yep.
Rick, step up here. How long you been riding?
I've been riding probably 48 years. So I started young too.
Mm-hmm. We're all in that same boat.
Yeah, we're all the same position there, I guess.
Have you cracked the throttle hard a time or two just when you were young? Anything you care to fess up to?
Not to fess up to, no. Not that I'm a safety instructor.
Well, I've already fessed up on the radio. So when I was young and dumb, as I like to say, I probably did 120 once, and it scared the heck out of me. I couldn't see out of my mirrors, and then I thought of a raccoon, and then I slowed down. County road in the middle of Iowa, with thankfully nobody around. And that was it for me. I've kind of regressed rapidly through the years when it comes to doing stuff like that, you know. So yeah, and then everybody's got a story like that probably, and I'm happy to be here to be able to say I did it, and that's enough. You know, so
things go by pretty quick at that.
Way too fast. Way too fast. So here we are in the middle of summer. Is there anything coming up if people want to get advice, any training, any specific dates before we wrap up here?
Our classes are, like I said earlier, our classes are offered every weekend, either in Wilmer or Hutchinson. You can call the college, and they can set you up for the classes. Other than that, like I said, we have 29 test sites or class sites in the state of Minnesota, so you can go anywhere you want, basically.
Something I forgot to ask, and maybe it's personal preference, is there any type of helmet or anything that is better for you? The more money you spend, the better it is. How does that work?
Well, it's not really the money you spend. It's the sticker on the back. DOT is the minimum sticker, and then you have Snell and AMSI. The best helmet you can get is the one that protects the most. That is your full-face helmet. People that are involved in accidents, if they don't have a full-face helmet on, they have 84% of them will have some type of facial injury. Because what usually happens, you get thrown over the handlebars, and you think you're Wonder Woman or Superman, going to catch yourself with your arms. You come in, and then the next thing that goes in is your face. So unless you have a full-face helmet on, there's nothing that's really going to protect your face in that particular situation.
So basically, if you like to breathe and eat,
with your own teeth.
Yeah, with your own teeth. Very good advice. All right. Well, appreciate you guys coming in and chatting for a few minutes here. This has been fun. It's educational, and it's a good reminder for all of us old guys, as we could say, on how to be safe out there. You know, you don't want to forget. You don't think you're going to forget, but by gosh, you might.
You're never too old to learn.
Yeah, never.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All righty, Sheriff Dan Hartog and also Rick Loge with us today, right here on Community Roundtable. Thanks for tuning in.
You've been listening to Community Roundtable, a free public service brought to you on AM 1590 KDJS. If you're a member of a nonprofit organization and would like to be featured on the program, call the KDJS Newsline at 320-235-2900. That's 320-235-2900.